Welcome to the Shenandoah Valley. I'm Jay Langston. Thanks for joining us today. As we mentioned when we sent out our ingredients and we sent out the invite, we're going to make this a Thanksgiving themed type program and really appreciate you joining us for that. We're going to make cornbread dressing, and I don't know if you're going to cook along with me, so let me go ahead and get this out of the way. If you are cooking, go ahead and make sure that you have the oven on and that you've got it preheating for 375 degrees. And in the meantime, we will start with the prep of that. But we are going to also talk about some of the heritage, why the food and beverage is so important to us, and got some great guests lined up with you for the program today. So let's go ahead and get started. If you're doing this, you should already have had your cornbread made and the biscuits that go along with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the cornbread, which it was half of the skillet, and then this is what we sent you the Wade's Mill cornbread mix for. And I am just going to roughly mix this up into, relatively small style chunks for the mix here. And it does not have to be in really fine granular crumbles at this part, because the chicken broth will take care of part of that. The biscuits, these are homemade, not by me. Fortunately, my wife is a great biscuit maker, and so has made these. And essentially, it's a half and half mix for the biscuits and the cornbread. And you can see how I'm putting this in here and crumbling it up. And we'll just mix it here in a minute. And this is what I love using the whisk for, is because I just bludgeon the cornbread and the biscuits into really smaller pieces so that when we pour the chicken broth in, we're not having to try to fight and stir up all of these big chunks in here. While I'm doing this, I thought that I would give you a little bit of the history on cornbread. Cornbread is generally seen as a southern dish, but technically it's not. Cornmeal and cornbread is a food used by the indigenous people and the Native Americans, and really even dating back much longer than them. It is thought to originate in what now is Mexico. And it was a staple of their diet because they had maize. And it wasn't until the settlers started arriving in the late 1600s and 1700s that it was adopted as a food for the settlers at that time. Part of it is very nutritional, and of course the maize was already grown, and it was then adopted in a manner in which we now customarily call it, the cornbread and the cornmeal mix. And I'll also say there's something about the cornbread mix. If you got the Wade's Mill flour, it does not call for sugar. Part of the reason of that is the way that the cornmeal is ground. Modern cornbread is made through, the cornmeal I should say, is made through a steel cutting process, which heats the grains up, and it actually starts taking the flavor, the sweetness out of the starches of the cornmeal. A traditional grist mill style is a much slower process, and is a slower and doesn't impart as much heat, and so it retains the sweetness in the kernels. So when it is made, you don't have to then add the sugar to the mix in order to make the cornbread. Okay, now you can see it, and believe it or not, that is my phone that is ringing in the background. It never fails. Hey Jen, could you just pick it up and swipe it down and it will go off? The beauty of doing stuff live. We go with it. I'll let you get a shot of that. That is what the mix should look like before I put the chicken broth in it. And now it's ready for that. So I've already got my broth measured out, and I am going to put 48 ounces, so a quart and a half of the chicken broth into the mix. And as my mother always said, you can never have too much chicken flavoring in this dressing. And by the way, this is my mother's recipe, which I know that she got from her mother, so this dates back at least to the early 1900s, this particular recipe. And you also note that, call it a dressing. It is not a stuffing per se. Yes, you can use it for stuffing the turkey or for other purposes, but it really is a standalone dish. And if you cook this and get it out of the oven, you'll understand why. It's about 5 pounds when it's all said and done. And I mentioned in the recipe, you want it soupy, and this is perfect right now of how it should look before we start adding the other ingredients. So I'm going to add the pepper in and the chicken seasoning. And I'll lightly mix this. There's no secret to this part. I'm just doing it so that I don't make too big of a mess. And now I will add in the eggs. Not having glass. Here. And always put 3. And you can do this to suit yourself, but I think 3 works best, particularly with this amount of the bread that is in here. Okay. Again, I'm going to stir this, use my handy wood spoon here to get this mixed up. And just make sure I get all the seasoning in. And if you're adventurous, and I happen to like doing this, you can add just a little bit of the cayenne pepper to it. But that's if you like spicy things. Otherwise, my mother would have never believed in putting that in here. I find it's good. My dad loved adding Tabasco to the dressing after it was cooked. And I have that habit as well. So here's the onion. I have experimented with this in the past and used more. It just overpowers the dressing a lot of times. And so I like just keeping it at one medium-sized onion, and then at least a full cup of the celery. Both of these have been sauteed. In this case, sauteed in bacon grease. If you want something healthier, you can certainly use canola oil or an oil of your choice. Likewise with the cornbread skillet was seasoned with bacon grease. You don't have to do that. I think it just imparts a little bit of extra flavor, but that's me. And so here I will mix the ingredients in, and I will give you all a shot of what it looks like. here. And it's essentially ready to be poured into the baking dish. So that is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to take this, since I put the spoon in here, I'm going to take the baking dish, and this is going to make more than just one 13 by 9. So you can keep the remaining of the mix, freeze it, put it in the refrigerator, make some later. I'm going to use, a cooking spray to make sure that I put it in here, and when I pour it and it bakes, it doesn't stick. And I'm going to add this to about an inch, inch and a half, something like that. And right there is about the depth that you want it for putting in the oven. And put it in the oven now. Don't cover it with anything, and let it bake for 40 minutes. And we will take a look at it as it finishes, but you want it to start actually browning around the edges, and it should not be shiny in the middle. If it is, it's still going to be, it's not that it's not done, but it's just not going to have that thorough, firm consistency throughout. And there it is. And so, Jen, I'm going to give this to you. Thank you. And now we'll proceed with our guest that we're going to have on the show and talk about some of the heritage that we enjoy in this region. Sam Funkhauser. Sam, come on over. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Glad you're all here.
Sam is the executive director of the Brethren in Mennonite Heritage Center, which is where we are recording this. And I didn't go into great depth about this because obviously I wanted Sam to tell you about this. So I really appreciate you hosting this. I learned about this through the architect, one of our premier architects in the area, the Gaines Group, who, by the way, has paid for our upgrading of the connectivity so that we can do this show. But that's how I met Sam, because they have some major projects going on. So I'm going to let you kind of take it away at that regard. Tell us about, the center here and what you have. We'll go into what you have going on.
Sure, yeah. So as you said, this is the Brethren and Mennonite Heritage Center. And our mission here is to share and celebrate the story of Jesus Christ as reflected in the lives of Brethren and Mennonites in the Shenandoah Valley. So we're a cultural interpretive center. And we live out our mission in three main ways. We are open for tours, we do field trips, and then we also do special events. I can tell you a little bit about all three of those.
Go ahead.
Okay. So for our tours, like I said, we're open for tours during the week, Wednesday to Saturday, 10 to 5. We have a beautiful campus here in Harrisonburg.
Yes. And we're going to have some pictures scrolling through as you're talking, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'll tell you a little bit about what is here. So when someone comes for a tour, if someone wants to do everything, usually takes between 2 and 3 hours. There's just a lot of interesting things here. Our visitors will start in our Welcome Center, where we have general information about who Brethren and Mennonites are, their history, their culture, and particularly stories focused on their lives here in the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia. And so our visitors get a general orientation to our culture there. We also show a video there as well. And then the tour progresses around our campus. And our campus has a number of historic buildings that have been moved here.
Yes.
Buildings of different...
Some were rotating through, as a matter of fact, as you're talking. Yes.
Yeah.
So they could see.
And these buildings are from different historical eras and different interesting aspects of the history and culture of Brethren Mennonites, but also the Shenandoah Valley. Yeah. So we have everything from a shoemaker shop and wash house, shoemaker shop and spring house from 1794, which is our oldest building right out here. Mm-hmm. Then we have 2 historic homes. One that we're in right now.
Which is just phenomenal. You'll have to describe this to our audience.
Yeah.
It really is.
So this is our log home. It was built in 1829. Occasionally someone will be tempted to call this a cabin until they come inside.
Yeah.
You look around this space, this is not a cabin, this is a house. It's a very large, well-built home for the era. So we've got this log home from 1829. We have a Civil War era brick home from 1854. And it
Which is
also
a beautiful facility, and it's hard to imagine that you moved this. It
Right.
was very close by, but you moved it to the site here.
Yeah, all of our buildings have been moved, like I said, from different places and in different ways. This log house was taken apart and put back together. But that brick house was moved all in one piece, up a large hill to get to where it is. And that's an interesting story in its own. So with that brick house, we've got the wash house that went with it. And then going around the tour, we've got a blacksmith shop that actually is a functioning shop. We'll have volunteers actually doing blacksmithing there sometimes. We've got a new building we just opened, which is the one that Charles drew the plans for. It's a replica turkey brooder house that tells the story of the poultry industry in the Shenandoah Valley, which is a big part of our culture and also just our economy here. Then at the top of the hill, we have a one-room schoolhouse that was built by Mennonites in the early 20th century in West Virginia that later became a church building. And then on the other side of the hill, we have an old tractor trailer that was used by a Mennonite preacher who did tent meetings. And it's got a really interesting exhibit in there. So that's sort of the things that folks see on the tour, besides just our breathtaking views of the Shenandoah Valley up here on the hill.
Yeah.
So those are the tours. Like I said, another thing we do is field trips.
Yep.
Each year we do several weeks of field trips in the spring and the fall, working with pretty much all the local public schools and several private schools as well. On a typical year, we'll have 2,000 people come through for these field trips.
So that's a good number.
It is, yeah. It's a great program. And the local teachers love our program because it's so hands-on and interactive. It's geared for kindergartners and first graders, but they get to see demonstrations of what life would have been like on a Virginia homestead in the mid-1800s. So they could do everything. They get to do some cooking. They get to churn some butter and make some ice cream. But they also get to see blacksmithing done and talk about basket making and weaving. They get to use old-fashioned hand tools. And then they also get to hear stories. We do a storytelling session as well. Yeah. So that's the second thing, the field trips that we do. And then the third thing...
And by the way, we had to come today on Wednesday because you had activities tomorrow.
Right, Thursday is our field trip day. Yeah.
So we had to accommodate.
And we would have had 150 kids running around here.
Yeah,
so
that could have been fun.
That would have been fun, actually. And then the third thing we do is special events. So throughout the year, we host a number of different events. We always have a Christmas event. We have an Easter event. I didn't mention another part of our campus that's not usually part of a tour. We have an amphitheater at the top of our hill in the woods that we use during the summer for Sunday evening worship services that are open to the community. And then depending on the year, we have other special events that we do as well. So for example, this particular year, and just actually it's this weekend, my days are running together. This weekend, we're doing some dinner theaters partnering with a local mill, the Silver Lake Mill, that celebrates its bicentennial this year. And so we have actors who are going to be in period dress, sort of portraying what it would have been like for that mill that was burned to the ground during the Civil War and some of the challenges that came with that. So we do special events like that, different ones depending on the year.
Yep. One of the things that Sam noted when he was talking was the brooder house. That was a term I had never heard of until I moved to Virginia and met my wife. And it is identical in architecture than the one that her grandfather had. And I just thought this was something that was stood up. I didn't know that that was a particular style. And that's one of the things that has impressed me. I wanted to have you give a little bit of background on sort of the heritage of the Valley, because the Brethren and the Mennonites have been such a part of that over the time, settling in the early 1700s, and I'll let you take it away, but there's a really great story about the German immigrants, the Irish, and the Scots, so I'll let you take that part.
So one of the neat things about our organization here is that we're focused particularly on Brethren and Mennonites in Virginia, because there are unique things about being in a social context in the South that's special about the ones that lived here. So,
I didn't know that. Now,
well, and so Brethren and Mennonites, like most German-speaking immigrants, came into America through Pennsylvania, and then eventually made their way down in Virginia. There were Brethren and Mennonites living here along with other German immigrants in the 1750s. Okay, but one of the things that make Brethren and Mennonites unique is historically they were people of peace. They practiced nonviolence. They took Jesus' teaching to love your enemies literally and refuse military service. And so part of the reason that there are so many here was actually the Revolutionary War. During the Revolutionary War in Pennsylvania, Brethren and Mennonites who refused to fight were accused of being loyalists, and they were treated pretty harshly by the Pennsylvania government. And that caused a wave of migration into Virginia in the 1780s and 1790s. So that's one of the unique sort of cultural heritage aspects of the Brethren and Mennonites. Yeah. Another one is that Brethren and Mennonites were some of the only churches in America that were consistently opposed to slavery. Most American churches divided around the time of the Civil War because some were for it and some were against. But Brethren and Mennonites did not. They took a hardline stance on this. So if you were a member of a Brethren and Mennonite church prior to the Civil War and you purchased enslaved persons, they would kick you out.
Yeah.
If you wanted to join from the outside and you were an enslaver, the people you'd enslaved had to be set free. And so for Brethren and Mennonites living in Pennsylvania or Ohio in the north, this wasn't as big of a deal. But for the ones living here in Virginia, it made them even more countercultural because they were going against the grain with that practice.
That's interesting. And Sam just pointed out something that was really explained to me, and it really talks about, I think, it's more than just a cultural divide in terms of Appalachia, but it really is a difference in the whole background and history of how people settled here in the valley and in the mountains versus the coastal plain aspect, which was very much like you said. It was the plantation, it was the slavery and those things there. That was not done here. And it really pervades today in many ways. The Europeans brought their community. We have lots of towns, incorporated towns in the Shenandoah Valley. That is not common in Virginia overall, but their communities and those towns are still the center of many ways. We're going to talk with another guest to talk about Harrisonburg here shortly, but I find it really interesting what you said about that, and it really does play into my understanding of some of the settlements and beliefs and how this area is different in many ways.
Yep.
And I love it, by the way, coming here. You got a lot going on. And you've got plans for where you're taking it. Talk about that, Sam.
Yeah, well, we're still a relatively young organization. This Heritage Center was organized in 1999. The brick house we talked about earlier was moved up the hill in 2002, was the first building moved here. We opened for tours in 2006, and all the development since has just been ongoing. This home, the construction started on this home in 2012, and it was finished around 2016. So it's just been one project after another. We're largely a volunteer organization, so almost all the work done here has been done by volunteers, which in itself is really neat to see. But in addition to the buildings I described earlier, we have ongoing vision for what can be here. We'd eventually like to build or bring a meeting house to our campus to talk about the worship practices of these two groups. We'd like to do a picnic pavilion at the top of the hill that could be used for our field trips, because right now putting kids somewhere for lunches when it rains is a challenge, and also would give us restrooms at the top of the hill. That pavilion would also be useful for our Sing Me High Music Festival, which is another event we do every year that I didn't mention earlier. So those are the two projects that we're really looking at, hopefully in the short term. But even down the road, we'd love to move a bank barn and have more information about agriculture on the Shenandoah Valley here. And then also perhaps build a larger visitor center and things like that. So yeah, there's a pretty grand vision of what this place could eventually be.
Yeah, and John, our producer, took some of the photos that you were seeing, but a hill, we're on a pretty high hill here, and the view is just spectacular over the city of Harrisonburg and the area and with the settings that you've got here. So it's exciting. Now you mentioned something, I've got to bring this up because I don't understand the term. You said bank barn?
A bank barn.
Bank barn. Explain what that is.
So bank barns were common here in the Shenandoah Valley, and they come from the German heritage. So they're not unique to Brethren and Mennonites, but they are more of a German cultural thing. And bank barns are built into, as the name suggests, into the side of a hill, or a bank is built behind them. And what that allows is it allows you to have animals on the lower level of the barn and have doors that open on that level. but then also have doors on the upper level that you can back a wagon up into to unload your hay, which was always stored in the upper level of the barn. So it's just a unique architectural.
I'm always learning stuff.
Yep.
Always learning stuff. I had no idea. I've seen it, but didn't know what they were here. Yep. Anything else you wanna share? Before you go, talk about this house, this log house.
Okay.
The photos, I wish we could actually take you on a guided tour of this. It is fantastic.
Yep.
From the hearth behind us and the hewn logs that are above us here. It's pretty amazing.
And the amazing thing about this home is that almost all the lumber in this home is original. Mm-hmm. So this house was, as I mentioned earlier, was built in 1829. And it was originally, I don't know if the viewers can see the windows out here, but there's a hill over here.
Yep.
And the way we like to put it is this house used to be over that hill. If you take Route 33 west out of Harrisonburg, you'll pass Weaver's Mennonite Church, which is one of the oldest Mennonite congregations around here. Mm-hmm. It was named Weaver's because the original caretaker of that building was a man named Sam Weaver. This is Sam Weaver's house. And it actually stayed in the same family for 7 generations until it was given to us, which is kind of neat. But part of the reason that we have it, and it's so well preserved, is that the house was lived in and modernized over the years. So it had electricity and plumbing that was put in, mm-hmm. and additions were put on, but also at some point the family put siding on the outside and they put plaster on the inside.
Not uncommon.
Right.
Yep.
Because eventually logs were seen as out of vogue.
Right.
But by doing that, that's what preserved this building so well. And so we were able to take it apart and then put it together. You know, we don't have electricity and plumbing except for HVAC just to preserve everything. We put it together more like how it would have been originally, but it was because the family took care of it and lived in it for so long that we were able to get it here.
Yeah, it is exquisite. It is. I was able to look around in it before we started the program today, and it is quite a home, is the way to say it. So, yes. Sam, thank you. We really appreciate you hosting us today.
Absolutely.
And opening up for us to be able to produce the show, and really appreciate the narrative on some of the history here as well. Unbeknownst to me, I moved to Virginia without knowing that I had ancestry that dated back to Virginia, and now I have found that I have many on the Scots and the German side that, yes, have been here since the early 1700s. So it resonates with me in a big way. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Glad you're here.
All right. I'm going to let you go. Thank you.
Yep.
Our next guest is Dave Gardner. Dave, he's around here somewhere. He'll be with me in a minute.
How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
Okay. I have really great guests today. Sam has been fantastic to work with in our planning for this show. Dave is actually the owner, proprietor of one of my favorite places in the Shenandoah Valley. It's the Valley Pike Farm Market. I don't know how much I should go into it or just let you kind of take it away, because it has so many great products that are sold here in the vallay.
Absolutely. Well,
I think you can do a better
Sam
job.
set it up really well, because that's actually a bank barn. So Jay, that barn was here on the South 11. It was the seller's property.
Yeah, and the Route 11 is the precursor to I-81 corridor here. Everything is Route 11 in the
Which
valley.
is Valley Pike.
Valley Pike.
That was the original throughway, was Valley Pike. And so Valley Pike was actually a building. Valley Pike Farm Market was a bank barn, as Sam
I had
described,
no idea.
sitting right here on the south end of Harrisonburg. And the property it was sitting on was getting ready to be developed, and we knew what was going to happen to that building. And I grew up in the valley. And actually, my roots come from, my family came from Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and we're brethren and settled here in the area. And so I grew up in the dairy industry with my family, and have deep roots in the valley. And so I passed that barn for probably 10,000 times. And when it was sold for development, it was like I was just afraid of what was going to happen. So we kind of just set out to save the building originally. And once we saved the building, it's like, now what are we going to do? We got the-
How do you make a
1800s.
money-making endeavor out of
I
this?
think you all might, the Heritage Foundation might be a nonprofit, and there's times I think maybe we're nonprofit, but we're supposed to be for profit. But so we dismantled it. I found a gentleman out of Philadelphia, and he came down, and a crew of us dismantled it and relocated it to Weir's Cave. And every Sunday, my family would drive to Harrisonburg to Klein's Ice Cream.
Klein's Ice Cream
every Sunday almost, along with everybody else in Weir's
really
Cave.
important, you know,
It's
company.
a landmark.
Yeah, it's a landmark here in the valley. Yeah.
And so once we acquired the building, I've always liked farm markets. I always liked country stores, and you know, the community had been really good to our family, and it's like, well, why don't we just relocate it here and build a farm market? And so that's kind of how that transpired. And of course, in the valley, growing up in agriculture is a relatively challenging way to make a living. Fantastic lifestyle, but can be challenging. And so agriculture had to diversify, and so a lot of the products we handle in the farm market are cottage industry things. For, you know, people that have other enterprises in agriculture are branching out, diversifying their income, whether it would be with honey, infused honey.
Now we're having. Let me stop you right there. Some of the ingredients that you received in your recipe boxes were products that were bought from Dave's operation, the Valley Pike Farm Market. So the Wade's Mill flour we got there. The goodies that we sent are also from there. So yes, and as you can tell, we were talking about something before we started this program, and some of the best honey I have ever had, I have bought from your farm market.
Well, and we take no credit for that other than we're an outlet for someone who had the entrepreneurial spirit to create that. And we handle thousands of locally grown, or when we set out, our goal was to be as much local as we could. Certainly, at least if it's not local, regional, and certainly in Virginia. And you know, the last case, at least in the United States, but it's mostly all local, and we handle about 300 varieties of Virginia wines and about 100 different varieties of Virginia craft beers, and local candies, local honeys, local jellies, local breads, bakery products, and so, yeah, it's a pretty interesting place.
It really is. And let me try to give you a better picture of this. It's not a farm market in the sense of a, you know, farmer's market going into a downtown. This building is beautiful. It's probably about 4 times the size of the house that we're in here. Very high ceilings. He has got a deli. He's got a mini bar, or as he was saying, it's not a real bar. It's a bar for tasting some of the craft beer products that you're selling, right? But a seating area, and then he's adding on with the coffee. I mean, describe the structure. I did a fair amount of that, but
yeah, it's a 4,000 square foot upstairs, and then we have an event space down below, 4,000 square feet, which was where the critters lived. That's where people get married now, down where the critters live.
And it's also where we're actually having a social event on December 6th. In your place. SVP is.
Do a lot of weddings. We did about 25 or 30 weddings this year, and then Christmas season's upon us, so it's going to be really busy with corporate events and that sort of thing. But you know, the thing that we're so excited about is this is a community space, which is what we really, that was our whole driving force, was to have a place where people could come together, bring their ideas, and it's really neat to see neighbors who've lived next to each other for years and years and years, but don't ever talk to each other, that show up at the market, and it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you forever, you know, and they're of course, they're next door neighbors, and to see them sit down and break bread together and spend some time is really to me, that's the best part.
Yeah, and I think that is something that you really have done, is you're offering an outlet for many of the farmers here who, as you said, are diversifying in order to, maintain the farms or look at how they can diversify to have year-round products. You've become a big outlet for that.
Yeah. And they're fantastic products.
Yeah.
I mean, they're people are concerned about where their food's grown, and that's been a real big movement over the last 10 years. Really, is homegrown, local grown. Where's my food coming from? And what's really awesome is that we're able to help those families, which they have fantastic products. And what I've found is they're really, really good at what they do. They're just not really good at marketing.
Yeah.
And it's not because they don't know how to, it's just they are so busy at what they do.
On a day-to-day basis, right?
And so, that was one of our driving forces was to try to help the agricultural community diversify, get their products out. And we're getting people now, we've got a brand such that, we get people coming from Atlanta that go to the Northeast, and they'll stop coming and going.
That was exactly what I wanted to lead into. You gave a perfect segue. You have become a big tourist attraction, intentionally or unintentionally.
Well,
It's interesting to go into your parking lot and you can go there and see license plates from all of the other states that are stopping by. Talk about that. Where are you taking that? Because you have food trucks now that you have there to.
Sometimes
people.
I think it's better to be lucky than smart. So
People
have asked me, is it meeting our expectations? And it's like, I didn't know what to expect. You just don't have any idea until you go do something. And but I think the attraction is just like this building is an attraction. When you walk in, there's a feeling of connection, of our heritage. And I think people feel that. And, to be candid with you, there's nothing in our store that anybody has to have.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, you can buy jelly.
I don't know. I mean,
but you can buy jelly at Food Line or Kroger. But it's that feeling, and it's the story, and it's the connection locally, and I think that's, which is one of my driving forces is I just hated to see us continue to tear our heritage down. And your next guest, Brian, is the development guy, right? But he is also realizes the value of there's got to be a balance. We've got to keep our heritage, and that's what's so cool about this facility is that this was back in 1800s.
Exactly.
They don't make them like this anymore.
That's right.
And that's kind of how the barn was. It's just they don't make them, not that you would anyway, because they're highly inefficient for agriculture now. But for what we're using it for, it's just that warm family feeling. So.
You want to give out your website in case anybody is interested?
Oh, they could just go to valleypipefarmmarket.com. And in fact, there's a whole story about the building. We took hundreds of pictures of dismantling it and reconstructing it and telling the story. And just, the best thing to do is just come on out.
Yeah.
Just come out and hang out on the back deck and on a nice evening and see the beautiful sunset into the west and enjoy a glass of wine or hot coffee.
And you're overlooking the agricultural fields and the hills right here in the valley. It is exquisite. And,
and I take no credit for any of that. People say, oh, it's so beautiful. And it's like, you can give God all that credit.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, the trees are so beautiful. It's like, come in August and help us rake the leaves. They never come. I just don't understand it. They never come. But
any future plans that you have, or are you just going to kind of continue to do what you're doing now? But I've seen it grow in my 4 years here in the valley.
Well, the last thing we added was the old train depot.
Yes.
We relocated the train depot from Fort Defiance that was built right after the Civil War. That was in bad disrepair, and of course the train company didn't want to tear it down because of the historic value, but they also didn't and shouldn't have spent money on it.
Right.
And they asked if we would take that on, and we did, and we which is really, really a neat, and that's a small event space for 30 or 40 people, and it's just a really cool building. We are looking at trying to build kind of an atrium like over our patio so that we can do some bigger things, but we'll see how that transpires. If we can move into from the nonprofit status to this profit status, we might be able to do that. So
one of these days. Well, thank you. As you can tell, I'm a huge fan of the Valley Pike Farm Market. There's some products there that I just can't buy anywhere else.
Yeah.
And it goes back to it's the quality. It's the type of the product that it is. And it's always a good excuse to make that stop when I'm taking that long trip to Stanton or on the way back from Stanton, which is 25 miles apart.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying. Yeah, there's a picture of the depot there. So, Dave, thank you. I really appreciate
Jay,
what you do
for
for us,
having me.
and we look forward to our event on the 6th.
Absolutely.
There, so
Absolutely.
really enjoy it. Thank you.
Great chatting with you.
Yeah,
Have a good day.
Thank you. We're going to do something now. Brian, come on in. Brian Shull is the Economic Development Director for the city of Harrisonburg. And I have not interviewed one of my local economic developers here. Well, I had to do Brian because we're in his footprint, where at least 1 foot is in his footprint here.
Right on the border.
It's right on the border. But Brian, and my notes, I described you as sort of the patriarch of economic development, at least of the economic developers here in the valley. Brian and I have known one another a long time, and he still allowed me to come up here and start working in the Shenandoah Valley.
It was dicey, but we brought him in.
It was dicey. But you've been here 25 plus years.
25 years, yeah.
And you have an amazing place. And I'm going to kind of just leave it there and let you talk about Harrisonburg.
Well, thank you. You're right.
So, yeah, because it's a fantastic spot.
It is an amazing place, and I'm so lucky to be here in Harrisonburg. Thank Dave for his intro on that. We love the heritage of the valley, and I get to be in the development business, but taking advantage of all the beauty that we have here and preserving that too. You wanted me to give an overview of the city, right?
Please give an overview.
So we are the largest city in the Shenandoah Valley. We have about 55,000 people here in this city. The city and the county combined about 135,000. So that's our metro area. And from downtown Harrisonburg, within a 30-mile radius, we have 250,000 people. So we have a big, sizable workforce area there. So yeah, we have a great economic mix. Manufacturing is strong here in the area. Tech sector that's growing rapidly. We're the retail leader for 7 counties in the region, and we're the hospitality leader with JMU being here, with hotels and restaurants. We lead the region there too. So it's a good mix.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're going to get into the JMU portion here in a second, but Brian just mentioned sort of the manufacturing side, because this is a manufacturing region.
Yes.
Downtown Harrisonburg is still active with all of the businesses.
Yeah.
You know, you had Rosetta Stone grow here, but you know, right across from some redevelopment that Kirsten Moore, I'm throwing out some names here that don't mean anything to y'all, but they do to us.
That's right.
We have entrepreneurs that are creating space. There's a feed mill that serves the agricultural community, the poultry businesses, right across the street.
Exactly. Harrisonburg grew up as the poultry capital of the world there for many, many years, and it's still our leading manufacturing, the poultry industry is. But we're also big in automotive parts and printing, so manufacturing is still big. Even though we're a city, it's still a big part of our overall mix.
Yeah, you have Walker, and then you have the plastics companies, which the names you have
Carry
different
Foods,
ones.
Shenandoah Valley Organic, so a lot of George's chicken, so yeah, a lot of big ones.
Yeah, that was one. The Shenandoah Valley Organic, we did a show with with the heat walls, doing that back in the spring of 21, I think it was.
Yes.
It did a phenomenal job. The major project. We were going to take that site and upgrade it, and before we could ever upgrade the site, these entrepreneurs who started in 2014 and now are huge.
The largest organic chicken company in the U.S. And it just started 8 years ago, so it's an amazing story.
8 years ago. Yeah, they took the site, built a what? 70,000.
Big $65 million building. Yeah.
Building, yes. So we're very happy about that. Okay, JMU.
Okay.
James Madison University is one of the largest of population-wise in the Commonwealth here, Virginia. Right in the downtown heart of Harrisonburg.
Yeah.
Talk about the influence of JMU upon and the impact, and vice versa, Harrisonburg upon JMU.
Right. So many people, when they wonder where Harrisonburg is, when they say, "Oh, it's the home of James Madison University." Oh yeah, I know where that is. So a lot of people are very familiar with JMU. We're so glad to be the home of JMU. It brings such a great culture to the area. It started in 1908. It is a public university. One neat thing that happened just this year, it was elevated by the Carnegie Commission from just a regional university to a national university now. So it's an R2 doctoral university. That's really going to take them up to the next level here. Entrepreneurship programs are huge through there, so that helps a lot of the students be able to take their business idea and turn it into an actual business. They provide them the resources to make that happen. So we love working with them on that.
They are trying to be true to their word, an actively engaged anchor university for the community. And one of the things I do think is exciting is the entrepreneurship program, because as Sam was alluding to, Dave represents, the entrepreneurship philosophy is really deep here. And I think it's so much because of the agriculture. Farmers are naturally entrepreneurs. They have to be, just by the very product of what they're doing. And so this is a good fit. You want to talk about some of what you're doing with, I say you're doing with downtown, but yes, you're helping shepherd the entrepreneurship side of things.
Right. Yeah, we have a lot of programs that work with entrepreneurs and help our downtown area. Downtowns of any communities are, the lifeblood. That people take pride in their downtown. So we have a great group. Harrisonburg Downtown Renaissance is our nonprofit agency that really nurtures downtown, and we have a partnership with them. And we have a lot of programs in place, and they really help these entrepreneurs build their business. So we have seed funding programs, we have loan programs, facade grants, and then a lot of training programs too. We have a program called Bricks and Clicks, where they teach them the digital.
Oh, talk about that, y'all, because y'all won an award for that. I didn't even think about that.
Won a big award for that. So it helps these entrepreneurs know how they can improve their storefront displays, right, to help their brick and mortar end of it, but then also digital, because every retailer has to have both these days, right, to survive. So we take that on very seriously and help them with those programs.
Jen, how are we doing on time? We almost there?
How's the cornbread coming?
Oh yeah, we are. We better get it out. We'll wrap up. You just mentioned something I did want to talk about with Andrea, with Downtown Renaissance.
Right.
A lot going on there.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned one of the entrepreneurs, Kirsten Moore, who I'm going to give her a shout out because she runs the Magpie Diner and the Perch, which is actually where I've got to give another shout out, Appeal Production, who John is sitting behind the camera, who does our work and does a great job with the talent that he has given, at this time. That is their offices. What a phenomenal resurrection of buildings and opportunities for companies, smaller companies to move into. You want to give a highlight?
Sure. They took an old industrial building. It was an automotive service center, and turned it. It was on the north end of our downtown. It was ready to go. It was the next step for our downtown redevelopment. So this entrepreneur, Kirsten Moore, took it over, redeveloped it, put a beautiful diner in there, a bakery, and then the whole upstairs is a co-working space. So so a lot of entrepreneurs are in there using that space and generating that activity. So it's
and
great.
she opened, I think it was May 2020. And we're like, well, what in the world? She said, I had no choice. This is when we got everything done, and it has been nothing but stellar. And go on a Saturday morning. I understand it's a wait.
You have to wait in line.
You have to wait in line, an hour or so to even get in. She's got a bakery, she's got the coffee shops, and it's just fun to see those kinds of things coming back. into the city.
And now she's taking the building across the street
Across the
and doing the
street.
same type model. So, yeah.
So yeah, we're very fortunate to have one of the largest universities in Virginia, in Harrisonburg, but it's just one of 7 within our footprint, but it helps set the tone for the others in the rest of this region. And so really appreciate you coming on board.
Happy to do it.
And talking about Harrisonburg, and him allowing me to, come to the Valley.
Glad to have you, Jay.
And, yeah, I appreciate it very much. So thank you. I'm glad that
Okay.
you were able to join us today.
Looking forward to this cornbread too.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. See ya. All right, Jen, perfect timing. Thank you. All right, I'm going to let you get a shot of this. This weighs, it weighs about 5 pounds. And it goes with so many things that you can eat from turkey. I know people whose tradition is oysters for Thanksgiving, works with that. Well, you talk about, you see the commercials for a turkey cranberry dressing sandwich. I'm telling you, this is the money. This is what I think is the basis for so many good, complimentary dishes as well. Like I say, I like to spice it up a little. I will eat this entire pan just myself, given the time, but I will do it with, ham sandwiches, you name it, whatever. I think it goes with everything. And that's it. And just let it cool for a couple of hours, because it will retain heat for a while, as solid as it is. And I hope that you enjoyed the cooking show. I mean, this is part of what I inherited. My mother was from the Appalachian Mountains. This is a recipe derived from that, from good German and French Huguenot stock. Also have Scots in my blood as well. And I just thought it would be fun to take a recipe that is so much part of what we are and update it and show you and tell the story about the Shenandoah Valley. And I appreciate our guest, Sam Funkhauser. He's off just to my right, your left, but for graciously allowing us to come here, and to Dave and Brian. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. This will be our last show of the year. We're doing it a little early, so I want to leave you with this. As always, I wish you a happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and for everyone during the approaching holiday seasons. I hope that you cherish those that you love. I hope that you will have patience and understanding for those that are unlike you, and I hope that you will be good to yourself during the holiday period. And with that, we'll see you in 2023. Bye.